variable declaration, when we are declaring any variable name, is it like a case sensitive thing?
No, like we are talking about props.
Yes.
When you declare props, no. Anything that you write between the single quote, that would be like you can take it, but yes, when you are calling that variable, say when you are calling that prop, that name should be exactly matching the one you have declared. Right? I declare a prop ABC, capital A is capital and BC as small and camel casing. Okay, so when I'm calling this prop or using this prop, it should be in the similar manner, capital A, B.
And between two quotes, there can be a gap also.
Yeah, there cannot be any gap. Yes, that is one thing. Good thing that we brought this up. There can be an underscore if you want to put a gap. You have to put an underscore because whenever you put anything between single quotes and if a gap will appear, it will take it as a break. So that name will not be declared properly. So if you want to separate, say you want to write start under date, you rather write date. Okay, so there cannot be a gap in declaring a proper variable.
Okay, thank you.
So like this, if you are declaring a variable, it could be a name or it can be something like this. Okay, did this answer your question?
Yes. And
Okay.
that there is any limitation to that variable because it will take only this much of characters.
I haven't seen that, but the best practice is to keep it short. So say if I'm declaring a variable or like a first name, last name, address one, address line one, address, so I'll declare it as F name, L name. So we try to, because while writing the code, then if you're writing such a long variable, that's a thing for you to like remember, spell it right every time and all that. That's the best practice that you like maybe try to do like for other, I would say, programming languages. We try to spell short and be logical enough that you are able to understand it. But yes, it is as per your will. You can keep the name as per your choice, but it should be, everything should be within a single quote, should be without any spaces or breaks.
And regarding the variable only, when we are assigning the variable to a number or a character or a string, it has to be defined something like that.
So if you're saying
Markcard ID is equal to, it should be like a number only, or it can be.
yeah, so if you declare this way, usually within the, it does not happen to be like you declare it. This is kind of a free text or a free field when you declare this variable, and this is like to be honest, there is another thing called as VARs used, but the thing is, I have seen declaring the type variable only in cases when we are getting a list or a hash set. Then you have to declare that util dot get get hash set or util dot that this property is or this variable is declared as a hash set, so it will come in a key comma value pair. So that's why that's the cases then you declare. Otherwise, if it's a number or if it's a character, it's kind of a varchar thing. It will save all of the things. And getting this particular validation that it is a number or a text field, you can do it at Workday's level. So because the fields you might be deriving or you might be getting to save this into is something you can have it at Workday level. But this is a varchar. So for text and numbers, you do not have to declare it separately. But yes, for anything like a list operation or a hash map operation. So we used to do a lot of hash mapping, 3.0, that I'm getting a employee ID and their email IDs in a hashtag. So I will save them as employee ID, comma, email ID of that person. And maybe when we are calling it in another XSLT, so we will use this hash set. So that for those kind of operations, first when you declare this prop, you would be something as like prop name and then utl dot hash that like the property or the type of variable has to be declared. Let me see if I have that syntax somewhere just to show you.
When you are assigning the file name or something file to these pops, then we should differentiate something like that, because pops is equal to name is equal to something we are giving, ID number or something. But when we are assigning a file, yesterday you have shown us the file can be stored in a variable.
Right. So you mean this? You see this? This is a free text again. So what I did is, why is it not happening? Yeah. So this is the file name. I've declared the counter. I'm like incrementing the counter. And in the next file name prop, what I'm doing is like, this is a simple text. So say a variable can have a text constant as well. So this is how we declare text constant. Plus is doing a concatenation. Okay. And then again, we have the text constant. So in the file name, the only variable we are using is the counter. So after the worker underscore, so this will make the file name as worker underscore, the value say 1 dot xml, worker underscore 2 dot xml. So it will say in this manner and say, since this is a kind of a varchar thing, it's not giving us any error. So you do not have to be really specific about if it's a number or a text field. This will take all the accepted values. It will take all the values and it will give you the result as per the values you have declared. Okay. So it's even taking dot, it's taking underscore, it's taking 2. So it will store the value as per this statement. So this is, with this we are doing a concat as well. And here on the store, I'm just using or calling this variable to get the file name. Okay. I think checking about the hashtag, let me see, this is error counter. Because accessibility is redo. So there is an accessibility.
What is the, when we will be using this
Right components you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this side component, you see, this is being used when you're trying to write, say, this is properly a JSON kind of language. So any kind of processing you want to do, like you want to write a message. Like similarly, we are printing a message using a log file. So on the right component, we write the message. So as soon as we get the right component, anything which we write on the text, this will flow through the assembly flow. Okay. So here what we are doing is like updating a custom object. So this particular, you see, it's similar to what we have RAAS, but report call. So this is just RAAS call, but we are updating a custom object. We are saying in this.custom object dot get extra path. This again, this object would be declared in there. Show you services. Okay, the services we have this. You see, we have this custom object or custom. This one is particularly this. You see, create custom object service. So we created similarly to custom report service. We have created a custom object service. I've declared this type of alias should always be without spaces. That's why we have this camel casing or underscore. Description can have spaces, and then this is the custom object declared in Workday. We have referenced it. It is just take it. Do not complicate it much with anything like, oh, this is a custom object. Just take it as a similarly to a custom report. In Studio,
so you are creating a custom report by yourself?
No, custom object is something like worker we have, right? So at times in like exceptional cases when we want to create a field which is not available in Workday, so we have to create a custom field. So for that we need a custom object to be created and then we will associate a field to it.
So there is a report already. You are adding a column to the report.
No, not a report. No. I am adding, you can say, a table in the database object like a worker table or data set is available, right? So say take this custom object as my name. So as a worker object is available, there's also a custom object. RN is available. Now RN object will have certain fields, like 5 fields or 4 fields available in Workday. Now you can store information which are not really available to be stored on a particular field in Workday. You can store in this custom object, usually taken for flag. So for in this instance, we do not have any what we call field to store a flag for any kind of permanent transfers or temporary transfers in case of a transfer assignment. So in this use case, what we did is like we created a field to store a flag. For this, we created a custom object. So that creation of object and all those things and functionally and technically both of the teams are involved. So they create, but you take it as that the object is created and then a field is created. So here what they are doing is like just calling that custom object, okay, and configuring the object. And at this place, what they are doing is like write, okay. So what they are using is worker ID, okay, and then where the employee ID is there, then so this custom object is now related, has been sent as a relationship to the custom object of type of transfer. You see, worker is the object here, type of transfer is the object here, and then they are saving the transfer flag in this custom object.
So the scope of this object is within the studio and within this execution.
No. It is like now after this value has been saved in worker, say you are a permanent transfer from India to USA. Okay, so for you the permanent transfer type of transfer would be permanent or any. We can have certain flag values to you. Okay, so whenever you want to report on this, okay, so now you can create a report. You can get the worker ID or worker ID and the associated custom object on your report as well and see what this value is. Now it will behave like any other field in Workday.
So it will saved in the cloud?
Saved in the cloud. So what this operation, this flow is doing is like, I would say, you see the boomerang. So it's neither an inbound nor an outbound integration. It's both. Like we are getting the data from Workday, we are validating and processing it into Studio. And then we are on the basis of our operation or validations, we are again saving it inside Workday. We're not sending anything. So what we are doing is based upon the options or information available in Workday, we are updating a particular field within Workday. We are not sending it to a third-party vendor to update. So all we are doing is like, say, the manual process of, okay, you have this transfer type, this transfer has been initiated, so I'll go in there and type in this value for the custom flag to be this. No. So what we are doing, like every day this process will run. It will see for all the type of transfers that happen, and accordingly it will update the custom flag for the employee.
So basically, can you go to the right object?
Here on the right only. Yeah.
Okay, so what is the name of this object?
The name of this object is type of transfer.
So if I want to access this in another report, in a downstream. So you're saying that for each of these transfer people, there will be a worker ID and a type of transfer available to be used in the worker object?
Right. You'll have to create a report. You will have to get this object on the report, and that object will have that value.
So this stays inside the worker source?
It gets associated. Similarly, like we have worker and address association, right? Address is another object. So this custom object will also have an association. So we will have a RPO kind of thing being associated when we create a worker custom object. So say for the employee ID, for each employee ID, we can get this custom object value. So while creating certain things, we will do this.
And you will use the relationship like how we did for address. So you need to use the type of transfer as a secondary object.
Right, as a PBO, like a reference object.
Reference object.
Yeah, RBO and PBO.
Okay.
Yeah. Can we see that custom object in the tenant?
We do not have this integration. So this is the sample I'm showing you for demo purposes. I've built this somewhere, but this is not something that I've built on this tenant.
So the custom object like that, if any requirement is there, that we need to create it. So who needs to create it? So
developer and functional team needs to create them, yes. Both, because the functional team needs to also get this configuration done for the creating these objects and which object and reference things to be set up. So yeah, both of these teams are in coordination create these custom objects.
So like it's just like a calculated field or any other process for that?
Yes, there is another process for it, create custom object, and then you have to declare certain values and other things. But yeah, that's not in the scope of our course. These are like really advanced topics. Came into picture because I was showing you this assembly. Otherwise, we're not covering this. Okay, so I will tell you what all other things what we can do. 1 second. Get worker response. Input file, create get work. Okay, now yeah, this is a simple example of a write component. Again, what we are doing here is we're writing a get worker request. If you remember in the web service tester, I showed you that this is a get worker request. Okay, I told you that if we will be calling a web service, this is what it will be happening in the background. It will execute this request. So on the write component, what we do is like we write this request. Okay. So when we want to call something, get an information or like from a web service, we call this, write this request. If you want to get it from a custom report, we directly call the custom report in the background with the parameters or the prompts it has to be asked for. Okay. So you see, this is similarly to what we had get worker request we have done while showing you this get worker request from the web service tester. So what we are doing, and so this is the standard assembly flow. And what you can do is like for your learning purposes, you again go to welcome, okay? Commonly to welcome. So on the sample, if you'll go, you will get this assembly debugger sample assembly. You can use this to explore these kind of assemblies where you are calling or writing a web service and get more advanced things like calling a custom or calling web service and all. So this is a better assembly which has been pre-built and you will have all the details available to you. And you can just import this into your personal like RTPs or your studios and try to run this or try to execute what is happening. So for instance, when we click on start here, let's see what all launch parameters or services are being used. So we do not see any services or launch parameters. Rather, we have a setup counter. So there is a props is a counter, just 1, 0, and then there we have a write component. So what this write component has been named, you see, create get worker request. So since this is a demo kind of sample assembly, they cannot have references a custom report and things. Otherwise, you won't be able to execute this assembly in your personal tenant. So what they're doing, they're writing a static web service request. Ideally, this should not be a static request because this will vary, right? Every time if we'll have a same request, it will give you the same output, but we do not want that. So for these instances, I will tell you one thing, that if either certain things are required, right? Like the prompt for to get the values for the worker as we did here. Okay, so this employee ID is a variable or a thing that is required to be entered every time you want different kind of values. Or either if you're running it for get workers, it will get all the workers if you're not entering the employee ID. But the response filter would have an as of effective date and as of entry date, similarly to all the other concepts we have seen in core connectors that we want to see the values as per a effective date or an entry date. So this particular value you can get from a prop as well. But since this is a static assembly already provided to you by Workday to explore how to call a web service, they are just put up on a constant. So in case you want to put up a variable, so what you do is like declare it like this, the rate, and then where are the curly braces and so yeah. I'm kind of in date. Okay. Similarly, I'll enter the props for a entry date. So what it will do, like instead of no, it's not taking it back. Here we go. Okay, so instead of taking this 12th of July 2018 every time, it will take the value from the prompt, and the prompt similarly you can get it to launch parameter and get the value so that you are able to change that value every time you run that integration. But the main purpose of showing you this assembly is like how we call web services in custom in a studio integration. So first you have to write the web service. How will you get the web service? You go to web service tester. Okay, you get this sample payload. Okay, you copy this. You go to a write component. You paste it, and wherever you want to replace any changes like the. As I told you, if you want particular sections not to be available, either you can remove them or you can set them as false. And then if you want to provide a variable value to a particular kind of prompt on the web service, you can put a variable. Okay. And what they are doing in here, stimulate web service call. Okay. So like component coding, so it's just binding it into a form of a web service variable. So like this environment body and then get worker. So what we have like these headers in your web service, it's just like giving a structured format before calling it. Another way to do it is like on this assembly itself, when you write these web services, you put in these environment variables and you put in the body and the headers you want to have. But yes, this is one way, like you put it into an input file, bind it with the header, okay, and then it is going to call process request. So if I'll go, this is a local out again. So now you have created the web service request into input file. Now if I'll go to the call web service, it is saying process response. Now you see there is not a async mediation, this is a sync mediation. So it will go from here to call process. It is immediate call to get worker. Okay, since they're not get worker response. Okay, so since this is a sample assembly, what they're doing is like calling this get request, and here they have inputted the sample response as well. So I'll go in here, response data, you will see data already in here for certain employees. So they have created a sample response as well. Instead of going in and configuring directly onto your studio, like onto your tenants, because they do not know the credentials and things would be required, right, to call. What they have done is like, similarly to a sample request, they have created a sample response as well and embedded into the assembly. So what it does is like it is simulating that it goes to call the service, then this response has been like we have got back this response with these many workers. I think there are 1, 2, 3, 4 workers. So it's just simulating the response. That's why it has written that they have written that simulate call to get workers. So it is not actually calling the get work service. Otherwise, in real-time scenario, what will happen is we create a Workday out scope. Okay, we put it in here. Okay, I will not delete it, rather it might mess up. And we connect this to the Workday out scope. On the application, what it will do is like call human resources as the application. Yeah, resources. We get the versioning. The version would be Explorer V44. So in here I will write 44.2. Okay. And then we already have this web service request being called. As soon as you connect this, it will call the same web service you have written on the right step. It will call and get you this response. So if they just skip this actual calling of the web service in Workday, because this is a sample assembly again. For doing all this, they will need configuration and all, and it will not work on every tenant. That's why they have just simulated the web service request that this has been called and we have received an output on the web service, and this will come as a file. So what they are doing is call process response. Now they are processing the response from the web service, like getting the get worker data and now processing it in the assembly. So they have used the sync mediation here, and now they're splitting for each worker. You see, XPath, get envelope, body, get worker. Per worker, they are splitting this record. Similarly, like since we have this response, it would not have been a particular employee in the web. Well, let me remove well. So now it's taking a lot of time to process, I believe, at least, and that's a lot of data. Yeah. While that is processing, I will show you the background. There is most of meta. So this is something the file will look like when you get the response. So for each of the workers, there will be worker data tags. So one worker data will have all the details of that worker, and this will be repeated. You see the custom ID. Maybe there would be certain custom objects or custom IDs that were created or having. So this is demoing it, and then data, email address, and then personal data. Then we have employee data. And this is the end of one worker data worker. So for every worker, we have workers, and then for inside that we have worker data, and then there are different sections like personal data, employee data. I think these are the 3 sections we have enabled. So that's why. So the main thing to focus is to how we are splitting the records or getting the records for each worker. And response is too large. I think since there are too many employees, we cannot do a tester because it's kind of set up in Studio. So what they are doing is splitting the records. So I wanted to show you how to get this worker, WD worker is to, you see the XML, you see, okay, that for each worker, like for each row in the custom report output, we had that response data, and then I think it was the initial thing. Yeah, and we had this report data and report entry. So for each row or each worker, we were having report entry as the main XPath that was splitting each of the workers or each of the entries in the report similarly. Okay. So similarly, from a response in the web service, we have the WD worker as the main, putting each of the workers into different sub-elements. Okay, so we get to the extra path as the rest would have the first XPath, the first XML declaration as envelope. So we are getting to envelope, then body. Inside the body, we are getting to response data, and inside we have worker. WD. So that's what we are doing. Envelope, body, get worker, response data, then worker. Okay, so now the splitter is what it is doing is like getting each of these records within the worker, within these tags, from worker to the next closing of worker. It is getting the response, and now we are processing in this assembly. We are processing the response. So we are getting the counter, like we initially declared the counter as 0. We are incrementing the counter to +1. Now it shows you, since this is a sample, it shows you what we are trying to do on the next row. And this is how you write comments on a eval expression. So this particular statement, since has like 2, I would say, backward slashes, it won't be executed. It will be taken as a comment. So we have written, we take a copy of the worker reference ID so that we can use it in reporting any error. So what we are trying to do is get the worker ID from the response. So, and how is that available or viewable on the worker response is like, we have already went into the splitter and we have reached till this extra path. So what we are doing is like getting to worker reference and getting the employee ID from here. So that's what they're doing. It worker we have already received, then worker reference and worker ID. Okay, worker reference and worker ID. So we are getting into inside this worker ID. Now you see there are multiple reference IDs for a worker. Any kind of object, there will be multiple WD IDs, because as I showed you initially, that integration IDs are something that are based upon their type. So one would be a bid, one would be, since this is an employee, it would be an employee ID. Say, had it been address, it would be an address type like home or work. So how would you identify that? What kind of ID are you going to? So if I'll just say WD ID, it will pick up the first instance and it will print or get me the vid of the employee in my props, but we wanted employee ID, right? So what we do is that I could go on, okay, so assembly debug, Workday ID we have declared. This is the syntax to get into the extra part 0 dot x path. The path 0 means like you are trying to get the only variable or value inside this particular x path you declare. So you are getting into Workday worker reference, and then till ID you have got, like we have got into inside ID, but how will you identify which ID to be chosen for the value extraction? So what we do is like inside square brackets, we write WD type. Okay. Then WD type is equal to employee ID or contingent worker ID, because it can be, if say, not sure if we have contingent workers in the file. If it would have been a contingent worker, this employee ID type will change into contingent worker ID. Contingent workers are like similarly contractors we have in our organization. They are not permanent employees. Okay. So from WDID, we get into this. We try to identify the basis of the type of the wedge ID we are trying to reference to. What we do is like inside the WDID, we declare it as var braces. This is what, and then we write @ Okay. So this is like to get into the description that this particular workday type should be either equal to this or equal to this. Okay. This is a list. Like it will see for the values within this list. This is one value. This is other value. So any of the references are now available to you for this. If it would have been contingent worker ID, it will give you this result. If this is employee ID, now 21001 will be saved inside this worker ID prompt.
What is a parts 0?
Part 0 is like we are trying to, we are trying to get into the exact path of that particular reference ID or the X path we are going to mention inside this, like around braces.
Will it be always part 0?
Yes. That's like you can say, get into your head or remember this kind of syntax, I would say.
Okay.
That part 0 dot XPath and around braces is something you will be using all the time you're trying to get any information from an XPath, be it a report. Okay, for a report as well, we can get a particular information, similar information, but what we have to do is like part 0 dot XPath. XPath is something what we traverse on the document, and part 0 is like identifying and localizing that the first value or the first instance of this particular ID to be get. That's why we declare part 0 dot XPath. And if we would not have gotten into which kind of detailed into which kind of workday ID, it would have taken up the first. That's taking the part 0, like the first time we have this occurrence, we will get the result. Okay, so that's about it. Please give it some time on this particular, I would say, prop, and try to see it and let me know if you have any issues understanding this, because this is one of the main props or the types of props you will be using while processing any information from an output, or either through a custom report or a web service call. That maybe you want to get, say, email ID of the employee into a prop. So what we'll be doing is get worker, and you will try to go under worker. Okay, under the worker you will get inside this worker, and then you will get inside worker data. Okay, and inside worker data you will go to personal information. I believe there would be ID, personal information. Inside contact data, address data, give it data, phone data, then you have email address. So yeah, from worker you will get into worker data. From there you will get into contact data, and from the contact data you will get inside email address data. So all the XPaths you mentioned, your cursor, say, imagine it like your cursor will be searching for this exact XPath and entering inside it. Okay, now it has entered into email addresses. So to get the email address, the exact value of the email address, what do you think the cursor should next be looking for, the XPath? Anyone wants to guess it?
The email ID?
Yeah, email address.
Email addresses, sorry.
Yes, address data, and then it will look for the email address. Okay, since it's only one
ID though.
I think this is worked at the rate workday.net.
Right.
They have given a dummy value. Okay, so this is what it will go. So if you want to extract the email ID, similarly you will be writing part 0 dot XPath, then worker data, inside worker data, contact data, inside contact data, email address data, and then the final class will be giving. You should point at the email address. What it will do is any value inside these tags, it will take it and store on the prompt.
So can you declare multiple variables of the same eval,
Yes.
one after another, or you have to add?
Yes. You can add if either way, like whatever way you want to do,
or just press enter there and do the next one.
Yeah, that's one of the things you can do. Like you could put it in the next line if you want to declare a new one. Otherwise, if you want to do add, it's like it can have a lot of values. In real-time cases, it goes like 20, 30 values that we end up creating for each of the things. Any more doubts on this one? How to get a particular value from an XPath? The function is path 0.xpath, and then you have to identify that how will I reach my cursor. Like in your head, imagine it like you're trying to reach your cursor, you're trying to point the location. So the way you will be searching that, this is inside this tag, this is inside this tag. Similarly, you will be defining here. So worker reference, worker ID. Then we see that there are multiple IDs. So which ID to be picked up? So what we declare is @ID type should be employee ID or contingent. If you would have like asked for WID, the demand was to get the WID instead of the employee ID. So we will just write WD ID is equal to WID, WID. The WD ID would be just WID, not the employee ID or anything, this particular WID. If you want to get this value, you put @WD ID is equal to WID. If we want this value, we are putting WD ID is equal to employee ID or contingent worker ID. Okay, and now what we're doing is like trying to get it into a create worker summary, trying to get the response in an XSLT. We declare an S worker summary. We have declared a namespace. So you see, they have declared a namespace for any of the declarations you will be using. So this is S. They have declared anything. You can declare as per yours, but it should be declared in header. Okay, then parameter, they are getting the value of the parameter. So this param, they're getting the value of counter, declaring. Okay, so S worker summary. Now they're writing the XML template match worker for each worker. Summary, inside summary, they're writing a reference ID. So inside the reference ID tag, we are getting the props value. Okay. So this is they're getting, this is the name they're getting, and now we are using a variable inside XSLT. So this is declaring the variable name is business title, and what it is doing is select worker data, job data, boolean if the job is primary job, then get the variable ID, like the business title, from the XML output as a string. Okay. Now what we are doing, if the business title is not blank, then print it, otherwise skip it. Otherwise, this particular title will not be printed. This particular row or the XML will altogether will not be printed instead of, okay, and similarly record number, and this will be the value of the counter. So this is how you get the value of any of the props you have declared inside your assembly. You first declare them as a parameter in an XSL param, name of the counter is name that you declare in the prop. Okay, so this is case sensitive, so be in mind that you give the exact name. And now we are just getting the value. This is how we get the value, dollar. So first we declare the parameter from that it is a parameter from outside the XSLT, and then we are getting the value, XSL value of select dollar count, and then we are ending the record number and worker summary tag.
The previous step is executing for one employee, right? One work.
Right.
But this XSLT will process just that one work.
1 second. Right. Yeah. After this, it will exactly write a XSLT for worker, create worker summary. Each worker, it will, for the input message, which is this, like a particular record. Sorry, get
so
worker
for that particular worker, it will check the business title.
Yeah, it will check the business title and not just the business reference ID, that is the employee ID, its name, writing the first name.
So where is it writing?
First name and last name, you see. XSL value of worker data, personal data, name data, legal name detailed data, the first instance, and then it is saying concat the first name, comma last name with a space in between.
Okay, basically it's keeping in the memory. When you say write, it is not writing to any field, but it is keeping it the memory.
Right. Either way that you can do. First, you can do this like store all of these values inside a prompt, like we did in here. So inside these props, you declare, or rather, if you want to do it in an XSLT, you do it directly. So in the XSLT, all you need to do is like XSLU value of, and whatever you would have written inside part 0.xpath, the same thing you can write in here. and it will get you the value of the text path
into your prop.
Yes, into your like tag when you declare. So now
instead of doing an XSLT,
which is more simpler prop.
Yeah.
No, but XSLT at the end of the day, I would say you will have to write because in the props you cannot write these tags. Like now the output after this XSLT would be something in the manner WS summary, reference ID 1234, name Logan McLean, this record number, say 12, anything. Okay, so the output is so if you want to form the output, you have to write a XSLT. On the props, it is just a variable that is being stored and that you have to anyway use it inside an XSLT as a parameter if you want to print that.
And this counter variable, right? Is it coming from the prop, the next one? Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, right? First, you have to declare this parameter. It is getting declared. The param is getting declared here. Okay. Now it is just calling the value. If you've declared any variable, right, I'll show you.
So you have the counter, correct? In the props, in the previous step, is that the same variable that we are talking here?
Exactly.
Okay, that's interesting.
As soon as I access a value and I write $, if I write $, it will give you all the variables or the parameters that you have declared in this. So you have earlier declared a variable business title, and then on the top one there's a global parameter. You have declared it as a parameter as counter. So we want counter. They'll just write. And from where is it coming? It is coming from here. Increment counter first we have declared on the first eval. Now we are incrementing every time we are splitting. We are incrementing the counter to be +1.
So why the worker ID is not showing there? That's also a variable, right? Or you did not declare? Yeah. Okay, got it.
We did not declare. So they showed you a different way of getting. If you wanted this, right? So,
so if you declare here, it will show. Okay.
It have declared it as employee ID or worker.
And this is also sensitive?
Right. So I'll take the same name I've declared for the props. Okay. So it will be able to get it to the parameter. The parameter, I will copy the name. Okay. So now instead of writing this,
just put
value of, I will write the
thing with select.
So it's not enough to write things for you. So they have given, if you want to write a value of pre-declared, it will write. Otherwise, if you want to put $, it will give you counter. Now it has started showing another parameter or a variable thing to be selected. Okay, this is how you do it. If you want to close, then declare the tag within the same line, the value of. I opened the tag value of and then got the worker ID. From instead of the XPath, I'm directly getting it the prop that I have already saved it on my assembly. Okay, so again now what is it doing? It is doing a validation, access the worker. Now it is getting to aggregate each of the workers. I think yes. This will show you an example of how to aggregate the record. So till here we were writing that XSL variable or worker summary for each of the workers, right? But now again, if we'll store it here, it will create one file per worker, but that's not what we want. We want one file for each of the summaries that we have created. So we got into another local out, which goes to an aggregator. What an aggregator does is collate when props is equal to collate, post batch when, and batches, these variables would be declared or parameters would be declared somewhere. The parameters, if collate is true and batch is false. So batch is when in processing or aggregating. Okay. So we are writing the parameters here. I will take the same content and try to get all these things being specified. It specifies if the current message should be collated on that document. It's a value. Okay. So this is going, it will keep on aggregating for each of the values until we have this collate when parameters on the aggregation, the step called assembly transfer message. Okay, so It is doing batch is false, collate is true. Let me check where it is sending the. Maybe they have.
Is it inside the validate XSLT?
Validate step? No, I don't think.
Inside the XSLT.
The validate, they have with this validating.
Summary SST.
Worker summary, 1 second, XST. So this would be open this. What is it doing? So this is very slow. So since this is a sample, what they're trying to do is like, if we wanted to validate, we would have another called another kind of report and get the value from there and check if the values are matching or not. But in this case, what we are doing is like having a schema available to you, and then element worker summary type is workers. Acted worker summary, complex type worker summary, sequence type is. So we're doing it inside a kind of a constant they have created to validate the file. So you can ignore this, but I just want to see, okay, I have made this true, fourth batch, and last message is false. I want to see where they're closing the batch boolean commutable. I can put this both number question common. This particular step, here and message font. Not in here. So here an external screen router efficiently splits incoming messages without the need to increment counter equal step uses and will counter zero extract summary read worker summary is this reference ID this certified define counter as a parameter and so there's the incremented value the document the validates the message the worker summary okay that's fine this is what back is for ideally, there is one of the when I'll have to set this every time we are calling this, I'm setting the fourth batch, and this is the parameter. We are setting this to false. So once this is true, it will stop aggregating. What I'm trying to do is trying to see if there is any declaration something. Split until aggregate. Okay, yeah. I think there we will be setting it. I forgot to see this is a sync mediation. Now you will see a use case of a sync mediation. So what it is doing, like it will split until on the last message, right? So it will keep on splitting. When the last message is arrived, it has been processed. It has went to the aggregator. It will come to the split again and will see there is no further message to process. So since the previous step was a sync mediation, so the flow will come back to this particular, the down part, as I explained you earlier. Since in a sync mediation, after the flow has been processed, in the outgoing part, it will come back to the incoming part. And from in here, it is going to generate aggregate doc. What it is doing, it is again collating FL. So you for declaration in workspace, it is again going to the aggregator. But instead, what it will be doing is like it would be setting the parameter for fourth batch as true and collate as false. So you see, collate is false. So this particular message will not be collated, and it will the aggregator to stop its job. It is stopped its job. Side strategy is always -1. Like I have never seen, I would say in my personal experience, if you're using a side strategy as one of the properties, it will be always -1. XML content collator. So what is this? This is the header text in the footer. So all the messages like the message you are generating in here, worker summary, everything will be collated in a header like this. I'll show you. But I'm a very slow step about. Okay, so this will be something like summary, and this will be like, okay, so all the things like for each of the references, WS summary, there will be one summary, and then everything will be inside this header and footer. So this is what they are doing, like the header and footer text. And when we get out of the aggregator, since it has now asked it to stop the batch, it will come out. So where will it go? So since we have called the process the response after the sync mediation, it will see, okay, we had the local in. So it will go to its previous call local out, and it will move ahead. What it is doing is like in the file as worker summary.xml, this is a static text name that they have given. Input is being stored as a message, and then they are just declaring the output for the store step to be a variable, and the variable name they have declared at document.reference. And on the put message like information or message integration message, what they're doing is like info summary output document is attached. So they're writing the info message. As I told you, you can use it to write a message. So they're saying info, the message has been, output file has been attached, the document reference. So since the variable was named as document.reference, the variable means the output of the stored step, document.reference, variable name, and deliverable. It is saying that this is a deliverable. The document tag is a deliverable. So now it will do is like create a reference on the integration message, integration output file. Output file will be available under outputs, and also under the messages there will be a message printed as info worker. 1 second. Too slow. Anyways, whatever the output was, output file has been generated, and the name of the file worker summary.xml, and the deliverable will be a true. So this is what we do when you are, say, trying to get an information outside, like inside data source, be it a web service call or output. You split it into processing for each of the workers. Then after processing, you define it into a particular format. And then when the format has been finalized and been validated, what you do is like aggregate all of those into one document using an aggregator. And for aggregator, 2 commands or 2 parameters are necessary: force batch and collate when. Collate when is like will be adding into the all the fragments, collating it or aggregating it till it is true. And force batch, as soon as we find the true, it will stop aggregating and move out from the aggregator to further processing. Okay. Any doubts on this? And this is a simple sample assembly available to you inside Workday. So you can just try to import it and maybe go back and try to explore what we discussed in the class.
Can I go to the aggregator? I mean, it's the first day we are seeing aggregator, right?
That's why I told you that I'll show you in a real-time scenario.
So in aggregator, there are 2 parameters: size, strategy.
These are the 2. Right.
No, aggregator box. Okay. Collate when and batch. Okay. So when you say that when the parameter collate is true, you will stop accumulating all those messages.
It will accumulate until this is true. Collate, like it will start collating. It will keep on collating till this is true. When this is false, it will stop collating.
Okay. So true is it will keep on doing. When it's false, it will stop. But what about the batch?
Batch is it will create a batch. It will stop processing. So when this should be true and this should be false when you want to collate or you want to aggregate. Okay.
So false
and the
true.
vice versa when you want to stop.
Okay.
That the last message should not be collated, should not be added, and now we want to create the batch. Okay, you create the batch and then you move out of the aggregator.
So on the next one, the size strategy, what is that?
That's one of the strategies. Similarly, like we had a splitter, right? We had XML strategies or splitter strategies like XPath strategy or X strategy. I think here also we have strategies available. So one of the widely used would be size strategies, and size strategy would always be -1. There's the maximum number of messages that a batch message can concatenate. So I've always seen, I'm not sure this why, if you ask why, because there should be a property, I believe, that mentions it to be -1, but yes, I can get you the answer for it, why it is -1 on community there would be available, but yes, whenever we use a batch strategy or a size strategy, it will always mention as -1. Otherwise, there are other very careful on an aggregator and here. Okay, there similarly to what we have as a splitter, the kind of strategies like XML stream splitters, XML splitter, you have custom batch strategy. You have different kind of strategies based on the type of aggregation you want to do with it. Then that is available, but one of the most widely used is the size strategy, and you set it to -1, and you collate or you control the behavior of the aggregator from collate true or false.
And what is the next one? XML content collator.
This is just like a subroute what we had, like, so this is something which you get it from here. Okay, so there would be a strategy and there would be a content collator. So this will collate the
header and footer and stuff. Okay.
yeah. So if you want to create or say attach any of the references out from this particular component, you will pull it from here, but the actual flow will happen from inside the XML content collator. So the output or the message on the collator will be transformed or send it back to the next component.
Okay.
Similarly to what we have in
route 2, kind of route 2.
Yeah, in the route or in.
Oh, this is not easy, man. I thought this would be simple. I mean, I can understand the structure and framework, but
yeah, that's why I say, like, unless until you build, I can teach you components and things. And even if I would say from my experience, there are certain components I have not used. Like, there are a lot of components which are very rarely used, but yes, there can be certain cases, complicated cases, that you might need to explore those components as well. And you need to define to a strategy that this is particular thing I'm perfect in, or this is the way. Because trying to do a particular job and through a studio assembly, there can be multiple ways. People do it in a different way, but you can do it in the way you are comfortable to. Like if I talk about this assembly, right? So what they have done is, this assembly have done is what we call as custom report calling, right? So we end up creating a sub-assembly for each of the custom reports, but since the assemblies end up looking a very kind of larger in size and confusing, what I've done is created this kind of a variable sub-assembly to call the custom report. So now this particular sub-assembly I can call whenever I want to call a custom report. But how we do it, even the report name in here, I've given it as a variable. Yeah.
So is that, can you create a framework commonly used sub-assemblies out of any particular project? Can you create it as a global assemblies and use it?
Right, you can definitely use it. There are parts or sections you can just copy and move it to, I believe, if I'll use, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do it right now in this rather.
There will be more, you use more global variables to pass the values path, XPath, or the reference IDs, whatever, right?
Right. You see, now I have copied the same sub-assembly of a variably calling a custom report from this Boomerang Studio to my RN Studio now. It would have already written the code underlying all these sub-elements. All I need to do is figure out a way to call this custom report whenever I want it.
So, but can I call from here to the Boomerang?
No. Then you'll have to, what there is in Workday, there is a concept of if you want to have a certain kind of reusable assemblies, then you create inside a collection. So when you create a Workday integration, so you create a collection. Inside collection, there can be multiple studios. Okay. Then inside that collection, you can call from one studio integration, like from one assembly to another assembly. If you do not declare them inside the same collection, that is, I think we cannot correlate them.
Okay. So during the certification, what kind of in-depth questions we can expect from studios? Will it be like parameter level?
So first thing, I think the initial certification would be just on a Workday integration. Okay. So if you're going for integration studio, it would be just core connectors and custom report. Okay. The first level of certificate, and studio is an advanced certificate. Unless until you have that integration certification, like this is the setup till now what they used to have. Now I think I've heard, because people, even I'm sending for certifications, trying to send for certifications. Now we have held on to it because they're trying to change the format and the kind of releases they have. We used to have to give an examination every 6 months to just keep our certifications valid for the new releases, right? So now they're trying to change everything. But yes, for till now, the process was to get an integration core or get for functional people. So what they have is like one basis or the prerequisite. So for an studio integration certification, you have to have a prerequisite of an integration core certification. And an integration core, all you have to do is like core connector, EIB, maybe. And EIB is also not something in the examination. They teach you in EIB, but they don't do it in the examination. In the examination, they give you a 2-day activity to do certain outputs from a core connector, write it into an XST, like say a text format, and do that all that constant formatting, like we have a fixed length and all those, and then truncate after this particular length. So all that we have to do. Get a sequence generator, use their services, get a file delivery. They will give you a sample SFTP to be configured, and you'll have to send that file into that SFTP. So for integration core, yes, that is it. And once you get the integration core certification, you will have an access to community, and from community it is a lot easier to learn, because there are things, there are papers, there are documentation provided or published by Workday that will help you get into more details. Like maybe I can tell you how to write a strategy for splitter or for aggregator. I cannot tell you all of those because those are not very relevant. I can tell you the most commonly used one. But if you want to go and explore what all those are, then Workday community would be your guide to know. And it depends upon your use cases. How do you define it?
Okay. So,
yep.
That is the good news that Studio is not included in the first set.
Part of the integration course, Studio is not, because Studio is an advanced concept. And even in this course, we are just introducing you to the simple Studio assembly. That this is what I'm not trying to show you, but this is something I'm trying to show you. And these are simple steps. You do not confuse yourself like what are the other options are. Firstly, you just try to stick to basic, like, okay, start here. Then we are writing a web service call. Here in a real-time scenario, there would be a Workday output that will call the web service. And then we will have a response from the web service, which will go to the call response. So we are using a sync mediation. This is a very useful step that we are using a sync mediation here. Okay. And so after the sync, we are using a splitter. So the response of the web service is getting a certain fragment. Okay, so this is how you read an assembly. So this splitter is splitting into smaller fragments. Okay, now we are doing certain kind of props. We are getting the values from each fragment. For each fragment, we are storing certain values. We are processing each fragment into an XLT. Okay, and then we are collating it. So we are collating it using an aggregator in here. So every time the splitter will have certain values, it will go, and till the last fragment, it will collate. And as soon as it will come back and say, okay, I do not have any more fragments to be sent across, it will go back. It will see that this was a sync mediation. So the sync mediation will go to this. Now this particular out will send the parameters that we will not collate the last message or now the current message, which is empty. And we will force the batch to stop. So the aggregator will stop, otherwise it will keep on running. Okay, so the aggregator will get stopped, and as soon as the aggregator gets stopped, the assembly flow will come back to the process response from the local out and local in, it will come back to local in, and it will look for the next component, which is store. Now it will store the output of the aggregator. So it will store the output in the message. And what's the output in the message? It is the aggregated message that we have got from the aggregator inside the header and footer. So summary, inside that summary, we have this store component. Okay, and then we are declaring it just that information that has been created and has been put on the output files under the integration event. Okay,